Welcome, everyone, to our Salon number 49, the Gift of Organizing Women's Conferences in the Maternal Gift Economy Breaking Through series, hosted by the International Feminists for a Gift Economy. I'm Letecia, Layson, your moderator. We have three wonderful organizer activists, Genevieve, Vaughan, Angela Dolmetsch, and Sid Reger, who will be, I hope, inspiring you and sharing with you some wonderful history and perhaps sending you out with a call to action. They will speak for the first hour, and we'll take questions the second hour. So let's begin. We're going to open with Jen and Genevieve Vaughan. She's going to sort of give us a context, and then she's going to provide us with her presentation. Our next speaker will be Angela Dolmetsch, followed by Sid Reger. So let me introduce Jen. Genevieve Vaughan is an independent researcher who lives part-time in Italy and part-time in Texas. She created the multicultural all-woman activist foundation for a compassionate society that did its wonderful work from 1987 to 2005. And she founded the Temple of Sekhmet in the Nevada desert in 1992, which continues its amazing work ongoing through today. She co-created the network International Feminists for a Gift Economy in 2001. Many of these women you've seen on our salons, and it continues on. Her foundational book, Forgiving, a feminist criticism of exchange, which entered into the world in 1997, has really taken the world by storm. We're seeing many of the outcomes and influences through the women who speak on our salons in the world today. She's written other books and co-edited other books, and without further ado, of course, she has organized conferences, many. So Genevieve, please welcome. We're so happy to hear what you have to offer.
Thank you, Letecia, and thank you everyone for coming. I have had the privilege of being able to go to many international women's conferences, as well as to organize a lot of conferences. And I just want to say that being able to go to these conferences, the international ones especially, has been my education in feminism and in the global importance of feminism and in the hope for the future, because women from so many different cultures have been able to get together and discuss things and come to common opinions and common thinking about a lot of issues. And we already do find that we have similar values as far as the big world problems are concerned, the problems that are created by patriarchy. And we're also mostly able to name patriarchy and understand what it is doing to everybody, and also name capitalism as an exploitative economy that also exploits, in particular, women. So as I say, I have been really blessed to be able to go to these conferences, and from these conferences also, in a way, learn how to organize conferences. And the first conference that I helped to organize was the conference in Nairobi, the UN Decade for Women Final Conference. That was in 1985. And we did what was called the Peace Tent there, which was a place where women could talk to each other from different sides of issues, people that were from countries that were at war with each other could speak, talk together, and find commonalities and understand each other and tune into each other as women. And that was at that conference, the Nairobi conference, this aspect, this part of it, which was called the forum, which was the non-governmental part, had actually had 15,000 women that attended it. And a lot of those women went to this peace tent, which is a great big tent, and that with two smaller tents on either side, and that had speeches all day, every day during this week-long conference that happened. And so lots of people could come to it. And of course, it was free, and we had a lot of information there to distribute. And I got to do this. I'm not going to go ahead and tell you the whole lead up to it, but as it happens, I was able to help to form a group that called ourselves the Feminists International for Peace and Food. And this was already an international group of women that formed in Geneva, where we went to a conference there that was organized at the UN between American women and Soviet women. And so that was already a wonderful beginning of conference going and conference participation. And a group of us decided to try to do something more radical, led by Sonia Johnson, who back then was in those days was running for president. Anyway, she did get this group of people from the US to go there. And then after that, she wanted to do an alternative to this organization that was actually had been created by Women's International Organization for Peace and Freedom, and so WILF, and so that we created this alternative group, and then that group became the group that organized together with me and some particular others this peace tent in Nairobi. And it was a group of about 20 women, and we all had different duties that we took care of for the organization of the conference and the peace tent. And it was really an excellent endeavor. I always say I started at the top, and everything else went down from there. Although it didn't go down very far, because we did a lot of other excellent conferences. After the Nairobi conference, and inspired by that, I was now living in the United States instead of in Italy. And I had begun the Foundation for a Compassionate Society. And I believe the first conference that we did was in 1992, when the first Gulf War happened. And we got women together to speak about peace from different sides of that question. And that was a very, it was an important conference, although it was not a huge one. And I'm proud that we did that one then. Then we did another conference in 1998, which was Feminist Family Values Forum. And that was this, where we had Angela Davis, Gloria Steinem, Mililani Trask, and Maria Jimenez speaking. And then we had groups of local people, local activists who also spoke in different sections and different rooms. And that too, it was just a day-long conference, but it was very exciting. And I think these conferences are wonderful because they allow women to hear and see the sometimes the most important women in the movement, or and who are able to speak to the general public of women, so that we not only read about or hear about people online or wherever, but we actually meet them and hear them and see them in person, breathe the same air they breathe, and listen to their words, and can ask questions if we want to. And that, of course, has gone on online. Now people are much more able to do that, even though we're not in the same spaces. After that, we had a meeting about the gift economy in 2004 in Las Vegas. And that was also a wonderful conference with a lot of people that came. Maybe we had some 20 or 30 speakers, and then a whole lot of people who came. And we ended up doing a book of that, which was that Letecia is going to show you. There it is. Women and the Gift Economy, Another Worldview is Possible. There it is, with essays from all of the people that spoke. And then we did also another conference in 2015 in Rome, which was the Maternal Roots of the Gift Economy. And look, it's all backwards there, but anyway, that's what it said. And that was about just what it says, the maternal roots of the gift economy, with people who came from all over, women who came from all over, and talked about the gift economy and the maternal roots. So these are the conferences that we have organized, that I have organized together with other women collaborators who have helped me so much in doing all of this. And I'd say that it was also a preparation for this series of Zoom salons, because otherwise we wouldn't have known, I certainly wouldn't have known how to go about it, and I wouldn't have had the familiarity with a lot of international women that I do. So the gift of organizing these conferences is the ability to bring women together, to hear women's ideas and thoughts about everything, especially the most important and deepest problems that we are all most worried about, and give our solutions. And it's also a creation of a kind of collective consciousness of women, a way of envisioning a future where women are in the leadership, and where women's values are primary and respected and loved. So I think it is these women's conferences that women organize and think up and want to do are a big part of the whole feminist movement, of the whole international feminist movement, because otherwise we would be separated from each other always, as we have been for so many years in so many nuclear families or jobs in the middle of patriarchy. And we are totally necessary for the future to even happen. Our consciousness as women is absolutely what is going to keep the disasters from happening of the environment, of politics, of the lies that are told, of wars. And if we can actually assert this consciousness and convert other people to it, because everybody has it within themselves since everybody had a mother, I have to say, even men. That's the way out, I believe. So we have to do it. And it is a great privilege also, a gift to me that I've been able to do that. And it makes me happy, even in these terrible times. So thank you so much. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Jen. Jen is being very immodest, because not only has she personally organized these conferences that she spoke about, but she has helped co-organize and embed the maternal gift economy within other conferences. As an example, I think it was A Mother World is Possible that happened in Toronto that I was able to participate in. One of Andrea O'Reilly's mothering conferences. And there was a little whole section where we brought in both matriarchal women and women of the gift economy and presented this whole other paradigm, not just talking about mothering, but how it related to the maternal gift economy in modern matriarchal studies. So that's one example. And then the partnership that she did and supported Heidi bringing the second Congress of Modern Matriarchal Studies that was done. What year was that, Jen? That was
2005.
2000. And there were people from all over the world that came speaking about their both researchers, academics, and lay people, in addition to Indigenous people speaking from inside their culture. And at each of the conferences that Jen has provided, she does encourage Indigenous people to speak about the gift economy in the way that it resides in their cultures, that it has existed since the beginning of time, so that we can see and understand that the maternal gift economy is at the root and at the heart of what it means to be human. So thank you, Jen, for all your hard work. And we look forward to perhaps another in-person conference sometime in the near future. And for all of you out there, we would need your help to make that happen. So it's a call to action for all of us. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Letecia. Let me just mention that about Heidi's conference that she did here in 2005. She had done a conference in 2003 in Luxembourg, which was, I think, the first matriarchal studies conference. And I went to it, and I was just bowled over. I thought it was so fabulous. And so I invited her to do a conference in Texas, because I thought that the United States really needed the idea of matriarchal studies. And so she came, and a number of those people that she invited matriarchal people from different areas of the world. And that's how it was the one that did that. And in fact, I think it did do what I hoped, which was to begin discussion of matriarchal studies in the United States. I thought maybe she could do it before the 2004 election, and she would have stormed to the election and gotten something better to happen, but she didn't want to try to do that fast. So.
Thank you, Jen. So our next speaker is Angela Dolmetsch, who has known Jen for a very long time and participated in many of the early conferences, but a woman in her own right. Let me just tell you a little bit about Angela Dolmetsch. She is calling in from Colombia and let us know earlier that she almost didn't get on because they had no electricity for about 12 hours. So right before she was able to get her electricity back. She has a law degree. and a PhD. She has a law degree from San Buenaventura, Universidad San Buenaventura, and a PhD from London University. Her thesis was on maternalism in Colombian politics. She met Jen in 2001 at the Wise Women workshops in Layson, Norway, and since then, she tried to put in practice the maternal gift economy. The eco-village Nashira is a practical example of the maternal gift economy. And if you haven't seen Angela's first video, you can, with us, you can see, and she talks to you very much about that. But today, she is going to be telling you about her organizing and the conferences that she's organized and what was inspired. And Angela, with further ado, I just want to mention that your book is coming out soon, first in Spanish, and hopefully we'll get an English translation. So that's in the last stages. Can you say the name of your book?
La ginecocracia colombiana, the Colombian gynocracy. Would you say that? The Colombian ginecocracia colombiana.
Yes. Wonderful. So Angela, please, she's going to be showing you some pictures and a couple of short videos. The last one is in Spanish, but it will have subtitles. So Angela, welcome and look forward to hearing about all you've organized. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jen, for making these salons, and thank you, Letecia, for introducing us into these wonderful salons that we have been doing now for, well, this is salon number 49. Thank you, Jen, for thinking that conferences are part of the gift economy. Basically, when one organizes a conference, an event, it is a wonderful means of giving, because basically, if you enjoy giving, is one of the ways that you can really give, and because you don't get really, it's not part of the exchange economy at all. So basically, undoubtedly, organizing an event is a wonderful experience, and I am going to talk to you today. Well, first of all, I want to tell you, for those who Spanish-speaking people, that at the end of this, there's going to be a video on the Peace Boat, and that is going to be in Spanish with subtitles in English. Le quiero decir a las personas que solamente hablan español de pronto, que nos están acompañando, que no se vayan a ir, porque al final de ahorita, dentro de 10 minutos, va a haber un video en español, que es el video del Barco de la Paz, y que viene mucho que ver con lo que está pasando en Colombia en este momento, que no hay mujeres en el proceso de paz. Anyway, now I go back to English. I am going to talk to you about 4 conferences. The first 2 are basically in this century, and that's right. Okay, and the first one was in 2019, and we did it in Nachira. That was the International Encounter of the Gift Economy and Other Alternative Economies, which took place in Nachira between February and March 2019. And it included the launching of Jen's book, Para Donar, in Spanish. There were about 70 women, including the women from Nachira. As you can see, they are at the back. They are all the young people who were the organizers of this conference. All of them were below the age of 16. There were about 70 women, including the women from Nachira. It lasted for 3 days. There were several topics from Colombia and Latin America, and everybody left with a copy of Jen's beautiful children book, For Love and for Money. Here you see Jen embracing one of the nice people that were there. Everybody, the last day of the seminar, we had a gratiferia, or free market. That is where everybody puts something and you don't have to get anything back. Also in this century, we organized, and that also, I must say, with the help of Jen, who helped us to organize this conference with Heidi. and they were called the Maternal Circus. They were Cecil, Erela, Magdalena Frey, Bernadette, that they all came, and literally lent us her banners of the goddesses, and with them we marched in the streets of Palmyra, as you can see in this short video.
Para que despierte la sacerdotisa. Rueda de campanas, tócame las horas, para que despierten las mujeres todas, porque si despiertan todas las mujeres, irán recordando sus grandes poderes. Reloj de campanas, tócame deprisa, para que despierte la sacerdotisa, la que lleva el fuego, la que lleva el agua, la que lleva ofrendas a su tierra, mamá. Reloj de campanas, tócame deprisa, para que despierte la sacerdotisa. Reloj de campanas, tócame deprisa, para que despierte la sacerdotisa. Reloj de campanas, tócame deprisa, para que despierte la sacerdotisa. Reloj de campanas, tócame deprisa, para que despierte la sacerdotisa. Reloj de campanas, tócame las horas, para que despierten las mujeres todas, porque si despiertan todas las mujeres, irán recordando sus grandes poderes, invocando siempre los 4 elementos, que claridad y llenas de contento, porque de sus hijas ella necesita. Reloj de campanas, tócame deprisa, reloj de campanas, tócame de...
That's right, looking at the world with women's eyes and the consensus of women of the peace vote. In this photograph, you can see Harriet Johansson and me. We met in the peace train, organized by Wilf on our way from Helsinki to the Beijing 1995 Women's Forum. As you can see, she was the tallest woman in the peace train, and I was the shortest one. That was Harriet and me. After the conference, frustrated as were many of the participants, realizing that the Beijing Platform for Action had been drafted by governments, officials, where women were not present, we decided that it was important to ask women what they wanted. And with that idea in mind, we organized 9 seminars in different places of the world. The first took place in the Rosary Islands, Colombia, in February 1998. The second in Salamanca, Spain, in September 1998. The third in David Province in Chiriquí, Republic of Panama, in March 1999. The fourth in Matsuzaki, Japan, in October 1999. The fifth in Valderrama, Sweden, in August 2000. The sixth in Kampala, Uganda, in 2001. The seventh in Kalamandi, South Africa, in 2002. The eighth in Palo Alto, California, USA, in 2003, and the ninth was in San Cristobal de las Casas, Chiapas, province of Mexico. Can we see this video? Can we give it a click so we can see this video, Diane?
Wars have been fought over the right to vote, and only 30%. And guess who are they? Old codgers like me.
No young women.
The 18 to 35 years old was less than 10%.
Amazing.
Now that's what I'm saying. We as mothers have dropped the ball. To think that our young people are so indifferent to their society, their community. They're all me guys. Because boy, my mommy wanted me to succeed, and boy, I want to be CEO, and wow, and if I don't have a lot of money, why, you know, who am I? That is a failure of the women.
And you don't even take that.
Well, that is very interesting because that happened in Palo Alto, California. And Harriet and I contacted 3 more women or 4 more women who could really travel to other places, could travel around the world, and that we could organize these conferences in all these different places. And basically what happened was that we invited somebody from the country of origin. She would organize a venue, could be her house, anywhere, and she would invite all women that she knew. And then we usually make groups of about 30 people, but those people who were not I mean, but they didn't have to have any special degrees or something like that. The idea was to meet the ordinary women. So sometimes we would just simply go in the street and ask a woman, do you want to participate in this conference? So they say yes. What we wanted to know is to hear what women really wanted, because we were very worried that basically the platform for action didn't reflect what the women in the world really wanted. So in these 9 seminars that we did it in different, we use a system, it was called integration, and that meant that every participant was given a post-it, you know, one of those little things that you use for maybe I got one here, post-it, these things. So we gave each person one of these, and they would just write there the themes or the subjects that they wanted to talk about, and they wrote there. And we realized that in 10 minutes, nobody could write more than 8 subjects. So basically, with all the subjects, we stuck them on a wall, and then everybody took place there. So we decided what were the most popular subjects, and then on that we started to do the conferences. We divided ourselves in groups of about 5 or 6 people. There were never more than 30 people, and sometimes we have translators because, for instance, in Japan we need somebody to translate from Japanese to English. And in these groups, we started to talk about in a system that had to do, first of all, where are we now about the subject, where do we want to get, and how do we get there? So, well, basically, it was very interesting because of all the subjects that were in a way being discussed. We identified 25 different topics: the media, values, education, political participation, the economy, war and peace, the new millennium, the need for psychological change, equality with men, discrimination and human rights, violence, church and religion, sexuality, family, welfare, the ecology, cultural inheritance, health, women to women, recreation and leisure, children's rights, development, self-esteem, resistance, housing. Some topics were recurrent, such as education, which was chosen in 8 of the 9 seminars, discrimination and human rights in 6, the economy in 5, equality with men in 4, political participation, violence, health, family and development, each with 3. The rest were related to their own cultural backgrounds, such as the church and religion in Chiriquí, Panama, the ecology in Japan, housing in South Africa, and the need for psychological change in Sweden, where women still commit suicide. Each of the seminars were held over 2 or 3 days. 20 to 30 women of different professions, ages, education, religions, nationalities, social classes, and races were invited to meet together. And the idea was to discuss the vision for a better world. The seminars were facilitated by a structure simply and above all were dynamic to ensure that all the attendees participate, talk and listen, and themselves create the agenda for the final report. First of all, to begin with, after introducing participants, each person, since they didn't know each other, they chose a person that they felt they had like a visual, that visually you could relate to that person, because basically nobody knew each other. So we talked to that person, and then we make it a sort of interview, and then we drew a portrait of that person that was stuck on the wall. So basically, that was the seminars, and in fact, we still have the manifestos, which were 9 manifestos of what women really were thinking about. Now I will show you a short film of the women consensus of the peace vote.
Colombia es un país reconocido a nivel mundial por la belleza de sus paisajes, su cultura, platos típicos y la belleza particular de sus mujeres. Mujeres que además de bellas son emprendedoras, líderes en su hogar y profesiones, pilar fundamental de la sociedad. Pero la violencia y la guerra por más de 50 años son parte del calificativo de este bello país. Una lucha de poder en respuesta a las múltiples problemáticas económicas, sociales y políticas. Las iniciativas para resolver el conflicto armado han sido diversas, con diálogos directos entre el gobierno y la guerrilla, en los cuales ha estado ausente la mayoría de la población representada en sus organizaciones comunitarias, así como las mujeres que no han tenido presencia en las instancias definidas para realizar las propuestas de diálogo.
Estamos en el año 2000. El presidente Pastrana está sentado con las FARC cumpliendo su mandato. Él había dicho que él iba a hacer la paz con las FARC. Pero ¿qué ocurre? No hay mujeres, ni siquiera por parte de las FARC ni por parte del gobierno. Hemos invitado una mujer, una escandinava, que viene y nos dice, ¿por qué no hacen ustedes una mesa alterna? Una mesa de mujeres en que se reúnan todas las personas del conflicto colombiano. Empezamos a pensar si eso sería posible y en dónde. Y dio la casualidad que conocí a una persona que era la promotora del Barco de la Paz. El Barco de la Paz es un transatlántico que le da la vuelta al mundo 2 veces al año y que reúne personas que están en conflicto con la idea que se llegue a consensos de la paz. Era verdaderamente el escenario ideal.
Una propuesta que cobró fuerza con la conformación del Consenso de Mujeres Barco de la Paz.
En ese momento el presidente Pastrana, que sí creía que con las FARC se puede hacer la paz, envía una persona que es la consejera para la mujer, Nasli Lozano, es la primera invitada que tenemos y ahí empezamos la búsqueda. ¿Las FARC mandaría a alguien? Bueno, no pudimos lograr que la FARC mandara a alguien, pero es una persona que está muy relacionada con ellas. Empezamos a buscar personas que han estado en los grupos armados anteriormente. Empezamos a buscar a alguien que haya tenido algo que ver con los paramilitares. Encontramos también algunas personas que habían estado secuestradas y otros que habían participado en ese secuestro, cuando el secuestro de la ELN en La María, en la ciudad de Cali. Y así terminamos reuniendo un grupo de unas 20 mujeres.
Así fue. Estas mujeres líderes y que representan diferentes frentes políticos emprendieron esta difícil tarea para llegar hasta donde ellos no habían llegado.
Muchas no nos conocíamos, había muy pocas que verdaderamente sabíamos quién era una y quién era la otra, pero pues la idea era que teníamos el propósito de llegar a ver cómo podíamos hacer este consenso. Llegamos a La Guaira y fue recibir a las diferentes personas. Algunas sabíamos cómo eran, otras no las reconocíamos. ¿Qué fue lo más importante de este primer viaje? Que se dieron escenarios muy importantes. Por ejemplo, había una indígena que venía del Cauca, donde el gobierno había ordenado fumigar todos los cultivos y allí había muerto mujeres embarazadas, niños, había habido cantidades de problemas y la persona que lo había ordenado había sido precisamente Nasli Lozano cuando era viceministra de Justicia. Entonces esa reunión entre esa indígena y entre Nasli fue muy importante, ese abrazo que se dieron estas dos mujeres. Luego, en otra ocasión, también aquella persona que había sido secuestrada por el ELN se encontró con una persona que representaba el ELN y las dos también se abrazaron y pudieron empezar a conversar. Y precisamente fue eso lo que nos dio la pauta para saber que las mujeres sí podíamos conversar y sí podíamos llegar a un consenso muchísimo más rápido de lo que hubiera podido llegar un grupo de hombres.
¿Qué mejor comienzo para buscar la paz que perdonar y poder buscar entre todas alternativas de diálogo en busca de acabar por fin la inusitada guerra?
Al final del viaje, cuando ya llegamos finalmente a Guayaquil, teníamos ya un documento de consenso que lo hicimos público en ese momento y algunos medios nos dieron la oportunidad de publicárnoslo. Pero infortunadamente eso no le llegó al gobierno colombiano. Cuando tratamos de que Nasli le presentara su propuesta al gobierno colombiano, ya era tarde, porque ya el presidente Pastrana había decidido que se rompieran los procesos de paz.
Poco a poco este consenso de mujeres tomó fuerza e hizo eco en más mujeres que necesitaron de un apoyo y respaldo, especialmente moral.
En ese segundo viaje, un poco frustradas porque nuestras voces no han sido escuchadas, nos damos cuenta que hay otra forma. En Cuba se ha llevado a cabo la Corte de las Mujeres y allí conocemos a Corín Kumar. Y Corín nos empieza a mostrar cómo nosotros podemos también llevar ese consenso a una corte y que nuestras voces se escuchen de pronto en otros escenarios.
Empezamos un poco a aclararnos, ¿no? Bueno, ¿cuáles iban a ser los objetivos de la corte? Lo primero que había que hacer era divulgar qué cosa era el bloqueo económico, el bloqueo de Estados Unidos contra Cuba, que más que un bloqueo económico era un bloqueo genocida porque afectaba todas las esferas de la vida social cubana. Entonces el objetivo central de esta corte tenía que ser divulgar los efectos del bloqueo sobre la mujer cubana.
Bueno, para Cuba y para el exterior. En primer lugar, conocer que existía el bloqueo, que no era una fantasía, sino una realidad vivida por el pueblo de Cuba. Y vinculado eso con los testimoniantes, aquellos que han sufrido en carne propia los efectos del bloqueo. Hay testimonios, recuerdo que a veces las lágrimas rodaban de una madre que vio perder a su hijo porque no llegó un producto que Cuba quería comprar y se lo impidieron los Estados Unidos. O una campesina que vio perder su sembrado por un virus que echaron sobre el mismo y afectó con sentimiento, es decir, que el bloqueo era una realidad que vivía el pueblo de Cuba.
Y así como ellas, son muchos los casos que han tocado las puertas del Consenso de Mujeres Barco de la Paz, y con ello la suma de diferentes organizaciones que reclaman espacios para hacer escuchar sus voces y las denuncias de abusos que los diferentes grupos armados ejercen contra ellas.
Creemos en que todo esto va a cambiar, por eso queremos que entre todos nos agarremos de las manos y digamos, guarda el Putumayo, Cali también, que vivamos las mujeres del Putumayo y de Cali también.
El problema del país radica sencillamente en eso, en la impunidad de los crímenes que comete la guerrilla, que cometen los paramilitares y que comete el ejército, que son los tres elementos de fuerza del país.
Cada vez son más las mujeres que han hecho un alto en el camino, pero esto es apenas una cuota de un largo proceso para lograr la paz.
No es cierto que las Fuerzas Armadas de Colombia trabajen con los paramilitares mal llamados paramilitares. Eso es falso. Ellos los combaten también. Es una fuerza peligrosa. Las autodefensas son una fuerza tan peligrosa como la guerrilla. Mientras estemos en guerra, Colombia no tendrá alternativa, sino pocas, para darle las reformas sociales a los que menos tienen. Los ricos de este país ya no están aquí. Se han ido.
Pues ideológicamente he pertenecido siempre a la izquierda porque creo que desde allí ha sido posible estar con estas poblaciones y hacer una mediación en términos de poder acompañar, de poder tratar de llevar un poco de sentido en la vida de estas poblaciones tan necesitadas y que pues como que no encuentran una salida y no hay alternativas en la política de Estado de este país.
Que la pobreza no es un problema de la ineptitud de la gente, sino de la inequidad. Entonces, empiezo a meterme en grupos de estudio y allí me encuentro rápidamente con gente que está vinculada al Partido Comunista de Colombia, marxista-leninista, y pues me parece muy interesante cuando me llaman a militar, a ser parte de una organización clandestina y bueno, me vinculo. Yo creo que no, había un convencimiento muy grande, no era una época que facilitaba eso y pienso que también habían como unas bases de apoyar la gente, de sentir dolor por la gente que hace que me comprometa y que crea que la partera de la historia es la violencia y entonces hay que apostarle a eso, ¿no?
Es así como surgen de manera permanente experiencias ejecutadas desde las mujeres con las que buscan visibilizar su voz, sus denuncias, pero también las propuestas con las que cotidianamente construyen y reconstruyen las regiones destruidas por la guerra, la violencia y la ineficacia de un sistema que no prioriza a los seres humanos como el factor fundamental para impulsar las propuestas de desarrollo.
¿Hasta cuándo las mujeres tendremos que llorar la vida?
Pero había que avanzar, indagar y conocer, especialmente llegar a los lugares donde el proceso de paz sí había sido posible. Pronto conocieron de las cortes y sus efectos.
Conseguimos que el barco nos invite por este último viaje y vamos a El Salvador. Tenemos la oportunidad de conocer a unas mujeres que habían participado en el proceso de guerra en El Salvador, que son las Mélidas. Ella nos acompaña desde un principio. Invitamos también a la madre de Ingrid Betancourt, que en ese momento ha sido secuestrada y está todavía secuestrada por las FARC. En ese viaje a El Salvador pudimos hablar muchísimo con las Mélidas, que venían de un proceso de paz también en El Salvador. Nos dieron la oportunidad de conocer cómo era ese proceso y conocer cómo funcionaban, cómo habían hecho ellas para participar en el gobierno y cómo las habían invitado también sus compañeros, lo que no había ocurrido con las mujeres que habían participado en los procesos de reinserción, porque los hombres eran los que habían hecho la paz y prácticamente las mujeres no habían participado para nada en esos procesos. En El Salvador terminamos de estructurar la corte y regresamos a Colombia con todos nuestros deseos de poder hacer la Corte de las Mujeres Colombianas. Y sobre eso empezamos a trabajar ya con herramientas nuevas y sobre todo con la asesoría de Corín Kumar.
Hacer una corte en Colombia contra el olvido y para la reexistencia fue entonces un proyecto que tomó forma y vida en las mujeres del consenso.
Este grupo de mujeres de las diferentes orillas del conflicto colombiano, que no habíamos podido incidir para nada en el proceso de paz, empezamos a buscar otros medios y ese medio es la Corte. La Corte nos da las herramientas para, en primer lugar, para poder tener algún tipo de visibilidad que nunca pudimos tenerla en el tiempo del consenso. Segundo, para poder invitar todas aquellas víctimas, todas aquellas personas que de alguna forma han sufrido los efectos de la guerra. Y por eso empezamos nosotros a trabajar hacia lo que sería la gran corte de mujeres. En ese proceso hacemos dos precortes, una precorte en Cali y otra precorte en Pereira. Y estamos en el proceso de hacer las otras precortes en las diferentes regiones colombianas y de hacer la gran corte de la mujer colombiana contra el olvido y para la reexistencia. La Corte de Mujeres es una apuesta para el proceso de paz, para que se vea que efectivamente las mujeres deben de participar y que tienen que estar presentes. Si bien el presidente Uribe nombró a una mujer como ministra de Justicia, esta mujer nunca logró hacer lo que debía de haber hecho, porque los estamentos militares no se lo permitieron. Por eso es que ahora que tenemos la oportunidad de terminar este proceso de guerra en que está Colombia, ojalá que las mujeres participen. Es que no puede haber paz en el mundo, ni paz en Colombia, si no participan las mujeres.
Una corte para repensar el país que queremos, un lugar de reparación y olvido, en búsqueda de una sociedad equitativa y justa, pero con el interés fundamental de resaltar el enorme patrimonio ético que representa para Colombia los millones de mujeres empeñadas en cuidar la vida, en narrar de otra manera, en lenguaje polifónico, los dolores y las esperanzas.
Vuelve más, porque le falta, porque no tiene ni una gotita de dignidad. No, 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 la dignidad no se va a vender.
I just want to say, well, thank you very much. I just want to say that Jen participated in the peace vote. And then she invited us, all the women of the consensus, to go to Puerto Alegre in Brazil. So basically, most of this conference has been also thanks to the support of Jen that had made it possible. And now, of course, we have not yet had peace in Colombia. The HEP, which is the Colombian Jurisprudence for Peace, has copied in a way the courts and the way that the courts are doing it. And we are again with the peace talks with the ELN in Colombia, but it's not happening at this moment. There are no women also participating in this study. Thank you so much. I hope I haven't taken too much time, and well, thank you.
Thank you, Angela. That was very beautiful. And it's very exciting to see all the work that you've done, but there's overlapping values. And I just want to say again about Nashira, which is an eco-village that is part of some of the outcomes that Angela has done to try to create safety for the women and peace in their communities. So there are 81 houses that are owned by women. The whole organization, the whole city is actually run by the women. It's a permaculture place, and there's an open invitation if you want to visit and see how they've been existing. Their community is 20 years old, and they've won many, many awards. So you can find Angela online, and yes, I'm sure she would be happy to speak to you. And she's beginning another women's eco village, very similar, of a different group of women. And that's just at the ground stages. So thank you so much, Angela, for all of the work that you've done organizing and continue to do. Our next speaker is Sid Reger. I'm so happy that Sid is here with us today. Many of you may know her from the Association of the Study of Women in Mythology. She is a good friend of mine. She is an artist. She's an independent scholar, an educator whose passions are prehistoric arts, matrifocal cultures, mythology, and animal mysteries. Now semi-retired, she still teaches relating to these topics to women's spiritual journeys. She is co-founder and president of the Association of the Study of Women and Mythology. And I would like to say that I first met Sid probably in the mid-90s, I think probably 1994 or 6, at a conference called A Gathering of Priestesses, produced by the Reformed Congregation of the Goddess. So Sid, welcome, and I'm so glad you've joined us, and I'm excited to hear what you have to offer, because it's not only educational, but you also organized a women's music conference. So you've been involved in theater, arts, and everything which way. So please, welcome, Sid.
Thank you, Letecia. And let me just, the first thing I want to say is how very glad I am to be included in this conversation, although I kind of come at it from maybe a slightly different point of view. And the second thing I want to say is that Angela's work is so inspiring that if nobody said anything to me for the rest of the day, I would still be very filled with the courage and the dedication of all of the women that it took to make that work happen. So thank you so much. Well, first of all, let me say that I am the president of something called the Association for the Study of Women in Mythology, which has probably the most innocuous sounding title of any organization I've ever been in. That was an intentional move because it let us live within academic settings where somebody would say, yeah, I'll let our faculty member go to that conference. That doesn't sound like it's really exciting, but it doesn't sound like it will do any harm. Whereas if we had said, you know, let's talk about changing the world, we might not have gotten quite so far, or quite so many people allowed to come to our conferences. That was the genius of Patricia Monahan, who was the co-founder of ASWIM. ASWIM, it's womeninmyth.org. I haven't put anything in the chat yet, but we can do that. And what you'll find there is that this is an organization that, yes, has a very academic core, but is also extremely open. In other words, what's important to us is the dialogue between the researcher, the artist, the educator, the cultural creative, because we want something that will bring about change. And as long as everybody just stays in their lane, it doesn't happen quite so easily. So what we're about doing is, first of all, using the term myth in terms of sacred stories. And secondly, using the term to help us remember that we are a feminist organization that wants to dispel myths about women and girls. So we're doing both at the same time. And I think the biggest trouble I have sometimes is that people think, well, myth, I don't have a myth. I have a spiritual tradition that's been handed down in my culture for thousands of years, but it's not really a myth. It's just the language. We're just stuck with a little bit of English. So please don't write us off on that account. And the thing I want to talk about really is I want to shift this a little bit to talk about how the work of organizing does indeed play out in a gift economy and as a gift economy. As an example of what we do when we behave in what we call maternal thinking. And my own background, my personal perspective is doctorate in adult education, background in the arts, visual artist, a lot of arts administration work, and 45 years I figured out, which is really kind of sad, of organizing events, theater events, conferences, festivals. And I also want to give a shout out to a woman named Nan Brooks, who had a feminist theater troupe that I toured with for a while when I was in graduate school, and learned a lot from her about this very notion, although we didn't have the same language to talk about it, that Jen has given us and others who have written about this. So I'm a Jill of all trades in that regard. And I think about what makes it different. There's a skill set that's required for any organization to do anything, which is you're putting on an event, you've got to have a certain skill set. The skill set could be used in a patriarchal setting, or it could be used over here to create something very different. So how do we make sure that we are not replicating the master's house and using the master's tools when we're doing this work? Because we really are creating kind of a parallel universe, as Angela's work was creating a parallel to the governmental work that was going on. We were creating a bold and living alternative. So what makes it different? Well, I think, first of all, that everybody who does the work that we're talking about today has a very deep passion for it. You have to, because it's a lot of work. And Barbara Marx Hubbard used a term called vocational arousal to discuss this notion that we, when we hear something, when we hear an idea that just fills us up and charges us up and gets us ready to go out and get moving, it's physical. A response is physical. It is an internal psychological arousal to reach out for more of the same kind of content. And I think I've seen that over and over again in the conferences and in the events that women who are passionate about these areas bring to it, and the men too. Just to say that you can see that is visible. So we're working with a notion that's a little different from the one that says, yes, we're now putting on a 10-day arts festival for this organization out in someplace else. So we have to bring our values with us. That's what got us this far. So we do. And how do we position ourselves to succeed? Well, part of what we do is about the content. I want to be, let's show that slide for a moment, Diane. I just want people to see one image of the most recent conference of ASWIMS. And I want to show you this. This is a fantastic panel of water protectors from First Nations of Canada who came in to give us a conversation about their views of the sacredness of water and their stories about their own life and times and their own work. And the reason I wanted to show you this is, first of all, it's amazing to have these people here. We have Margaret Kress on the left, who organized the panel. Meek Mahan is speaking. Douglas Cardinal is listening to her. as is Marjorie Bocash. So what you have here is a wisdom that in 3 or 4 people encapsulates a wisdom that covers such an enormous range of important issues that we're all interested in covering. And I wanted to show you this in part because in the background, you see one of Lydia Rule's banners. And that's kind of what we do. We try to take the artists with us wherever we go. And the other reason I wanted to show you this is, speaking of vocational arousal, the thing that went through my mind when I first heard them begin to speak was simply, I am so privileged to be in this room, to be hearing these people. So that to me is what we're really trying to do is, and it's very simple for me. There's a room I want to be in, and I want the most interesting people in the world to be talking about the most wonderful things, and I want to be able to be there and bring them tea. That's a real simple view of organizing. So we're about the content. We're also about the people, those 4 individuals, and who are they and what do they bring? We're about the people who come to the conference and what do they bring and what will they take away? And we're also about one other thing that I think we in the Western Hemisphere tend to not dwell on, at least in the northern part of the Western Hemisphere, which is, what's the mystery? There's going to be something that does not look like what you thought it was going to be when you started planning this. What's the mystery? If you make room for the mystery, it helps a whole lot to keep you sane, for one thing, but it also gives you the opportunity to move toward an event that is yet better able to deliver the gifts to a larger group of people. So I want to give you a couple of examples about how I think this kind of works, and then to use that to talk about these maternal gifts. When I think about the gifts of mothers, the things I think about are nurturance and empowerment, and also instilling curiosity. So that's where we get to the mystery. If we can create a situation in which other people, we're enhancing their curiosity, we don't have to have all the answers. We just make a big, beautiful container in which wonderful, unexpected things can happen. So the first example of this in terms of the nurturance is that I'll just tell you that years ago, I got an email from a woman I didn't know whose proposal had been accepted for a conference. And it was right in the busiest time of our putting everything together. And the message I got from her said, I am so sorry. I've just had a death in the family. I will not be able to come. So I did the thing that we always do, which is I wrote back to her and explained, of course, we understood and wished them all comfort and peace of mind and, good memories, the things we do, right? I met her years later, and the first thing she said to me is, I wanted to come back and join this organization because I've been doing academic conferences all my life, and that's the first time anyone ever took the time to console me about something. And what I thought was, how could that be? I felt so sad for her because we can't distinguish what we do from why we do it, right? This is not, I'm not making widgets. I might be creating a conference, but I'm surely not doing it alone. And that woman's life at that moment, that was the most important gift, is to stop and acknowledge where she is. And I think that's what we do. So I think that maternal thinking, which is what we call it in our new proceedings volume, is about taking care of your own curiosity and being willing to do that. It's about experiencing and letting yourself experience a balance between that left-brained, oh my goodness, we have to do X number of dinners for X number of people at X number of dollars, and the right-brained, but here this is unfolding and I see a different option than we thought we had. So it requires a lot of flexibility and seeing the big picture and embracing the unexpected. The example I want to give you about that is that when I was working in Bloomington, Indiana, where I went to grad school, we, some of us in town, because we could, hosted events, hosted concerts, and I booked for a jazz club and other kinds of things for a while, so odd. But we wanted to hold a concert, so we booked a major feminist performer to come in and do a concert for us. And then after the contracts were all signed, somebody said, oh no, don't you know that the little press that is 20 miles up the road here is having they're having their 10th anniversary on the same day. It's going to break everything apart. We're double booked. We can't, what are we going to do about this? And the maternal gifting answer is, well, we don't have to be tied to one venue. We said we were going to go to this. Why don't we be in the same building she's in? Why don't we move our concert to the same building where that reception is? And why don't we see if the performer, who was happy to do this, would say, we're going to have a 45-minute intermission. And we're going to tell everybody, go up the steps, go see this reception. So what happened, because we did that, it took us out of that planning place where we thought we knew what was going on. But it gave her small event a much wider audience, and people loved it. They loved the confluence of those two events being together, and it just fit beautifully. So that's a maternal gifting right there, is to be able to say, nope, we're just not going to do it the way we thought we were going to. In this, my personal goal is always, what are you going to do next? I can't help being an old teacher, an old educator. So what are you going to do? We come away from this. Sure, I hope you are really charged up and really empowered and really curious. But how's it going to manifest? What are you going to do with it? So I'm always looking for that next pragmatic step that will take this energy back into the goals that we set for ourselves. So the practical outcome. And the little story I want to tell you about that is just that at this conference, I had a woman come up to me who's given a couple of terrific presentations for us over the years. And her story was, when I first came to your symposium, I was on the verge of giving up all of my scholarship in this area because absolutely nobody was interested in talking about what I was talking about. And I came to this symposium and I realized, oh my goodness, people are excited about this. And she said, I went home and started writing my book. And her book is, of course, now is a highly important book, and it's still available and still in print. And that's the kind of thing that you hope is going to happen. Those are the little things that as a teacher or an organizer, you often don't get to see for a decade, or maybe you never get to see them at all, but somebody gets to see them. And that's the important part. So the note I made to myself about this, which is just another way to say what I've been saying, I think, is that organizing a conference is another face of teaching, which is another face of art, which is another face of ceremony. So the medium changes, but our intention always remains the same. It's always to be available to creating something that is yet more sacred for people who are there. And what is the community that you serve? That will make some difference. I have some ideas about just two cautionary tales, or two things that I think we need to keep our eyes on as we're organizing. You notice I haven't talked a whole lot about ASWA. It's because what I think about this all the time. I think about how do we convey something that helps us strengthen as we go along and doesn't burn us out. So the two issues that I think about are that yes, we want to create a nurturing container. We absolutely do. What we don't want to do is fall into codependency. We cannot be everything to everybody. And as organizers, we have to be able, even if it takes a lot of practice, we have to be able to draw some boundaries on how we can handle various issues, because because we cannot be everything to everybody. And it's part of the don't take it personally, you know. I have one good friend who has something posted in her office that says, I'm here to do the mother's work, not her job. So I'm in charge of what's right in front of me, but I can't fix everything and I can't fix everybody. So if somebody comes in and they're upset about something, we do our best to fix it within the limits of what we can do, and then we have to move on. And that in and of itself is can be a nurturing exchange. If it's done with love and respect, I can't fix everything. And the reason I want to bring that up is just because we know that sometimes folks come to conferences and they've had a really rough time getting there and things are hard. And if they're met with kindness, then the gift is reciprocal. It's not only for the woman who needed it, it's for the woman who gives. The other thing I want to say, which is odd to some people, and some people may relate to this or may not, I think we have to be careful to make a distinction between I am privileged to be in this room and just I am privileged. Because organizing doesn't make me any more important than anybody else in the room. Organizing just means I have a specific set of tasks. And I don't want to in any way replicate the patriarchal structures or the patriarchal attitudes that people find in the rest of their lives. So if someone comes in and needs to get something a little different from us, then that's all right. We're open to that. And I think if we stay humble about it and stay open, we're in pretty good shape. We also have to be careful that we're not creating a container in which some of these values either exclude people or place a hierarchy on who's important. So, you know, it's just a cautionary tale. I'm still working on my racism, classism, sexism. I think everybody is. And we need to be especially aware of that if we're organizing for a vast community of wonderful women. And I started out to write this and then rewrote something. So I started out to say, well, you have to begin by taking care of the place and the community you find yourself in. And then I thought, this is not about taking care. It's really not. This is about co-creating. So what we're doing is co-creating. So my questions to myself are, am I co-creating with the place and the residents of that place? Am I aware of where I am? We picked Syracuse for extremely specific reasons. We wanted to be where the Haudenosaunee women taught us about feminism. We wanted to be where the feminism was. We wanted to be where Harriet Tubman's energy was. We wanted to be where there's living traditions that we could pull into our community, because it really is all about the conversation. So then, are we co-creating with our presenters? One of the ways we used to do that was by setting up what we called, back in the festival days, presenter friends. So every presenter who was going to have a specific need or had to carry a lot of stuff around, there was a volunteer who helped out with that. And we did that, especially in festivals. I always found it to be useful, not only for performers, but when we moved the Women's Music Festival to Bloomington. It's the first time it's in this town. It's 3,500 women or 4,000, I don't know, all hit town at the same time. They don't know the IU campus. They don't know anything. And so we set it up so that every building that we had workshops in, and of course they were scattered around the campus, had at least one or two volunteers whose job it simply was to say it's down the hall and on the right. And who was also there to help the presenters, because we knew there would be confusion and we wanted to be co-creating with the participants. We didn't want anyone to feel frustrated or to say, oh, I didn't know I wasn't going to be able to walk that far. No, we're going to have it set up. When you get into registration, we're going to find out. We're going to see what you need. So we can't overlook any of that, I guess is what I'm saying. And we also have to take care of our volunteers. When we're doing all of that volunteer work, the other thing we did in the festivals was always, we had a volunteer meeting, right, breakfast meeting, right, smack in the middle of the conferences, so that the women who were out there doing the work, and maybe they're kind of shell-shocked by that point, could come back together. We all get centered together. We all take care of each other. And then you have to take care of yourself. You have to co-create with all the parts of yourself that you brought to this. So don't forget to drink water. Don't forget to sleep if you can. And be willing, first of all, to say you don't know something if you don't know something. No harm, no foul. And also be willing to delegate. It's the kindest thing you can do. If you delegate, you're letting someone else experience something that, yeah, you could do it faster yourself. Sometimes that's important. A lot of times it's not. It's just a habit of mind. So you can see I'm not really talking about specific events here, but I'm hoping that we, all of us, moving forward, can have conversations like this and can talk about what makes feminist leadership different than any other kind of leadership. What makes the gifting model something that we can see and can recreate and do kind of as a natural process, and what enables us to invite more folks in to join the fun. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Sid. You brought up so many wonderful points and bringing us into a practical note. And I would just like to say, each of the speakers, there's an interrelatedness of the work. If you can see that, it's because we do women's work. And it is so amazing to be able to see the cross-pollination, to be able to see how we learn from each other, and more specifically, the innovation that happens. And just as an example, this year, for the first time, the Maternal Gift Economy actually did a one-day mini conference, a gathering of women at the end of the Association of the Study of Women in Mythology, and served the needs of a community in a very specific way. And it was very successful. If you want to know about that, I'll put a link in the chat that you can go and take a look at the Salon. We gave some feedback there. Sid was on with us. And that was quite successful. But another cross-pollination had to do with, and I was involved in that organizing, but I've also been involved in organizing the Modern Matriarchal Studies Day, which Jen has talked about, which Angela has talked about. We also do a mini conference that brings this work of the modern matriarchal studies, the core matrix, if you will, the politics of how we need to make our decisions and choices that Angela Dolmetsch was talking about on the Peace Boat, and which Jen was talking about when she was setting up the Nairobi Peace Tent. And all of these things are valuable. Women, the way we organize, do it in a way that is much more colorful. And I want to say, Migmahan, a shout out to you because I see you here with us today. Thank you for being with us. And I want to give a shout out to also Maria, who was at ASWIM and presented her Tonaina. And that was this whole creation of ritual theater that she brought from Costa Rica, and the music that's involved, women, Guadalupe Urbana, who is also from Costa Rica, brought her fabulous music. Musicians came from all over the world. It was wonderful. So I want to encourage you all to begin to organize something very fun and exciting for the women in your communities. And Jen, is there anything you'd like to say before we open up for questions?
No, I just wanted to thank Sid and Angela both, and you, Letecia, of course, for the wonderful presentations of your wonderful work. And, people wouldn't know about it unless they heard you here, I think, exactly what you did and how you fashioned it and continue to fashion it and make it happen. And so I'm so glad you came, and it's so wonderful to hear your words. And yeah, it's still, again, just what I think. Wait, I did have something I wanted to just read a minute, then I'll just tell you very quickly. This is from this book of the conference, the Feminist Family Values conference that we did in 1998, I guess it is. And this is from a friend of mine, Sally Jacques, who was presenting, introducing the conference. And what does she say? That, oh, there it is. Before it grows a leaf, a tree sends out an energy matrix. And she says, we are all trees developing our energy matrices, envisioning our lives as we wish them to be. And I think that's what conferences do. We create energy matrices together, and that is an energy matrix for a better world.
Thank you, Jen. So for those of you listening with us in the Zoom room today, do you have any questions? If you would put them in the Q&A and in the chat, that would be great. But I wonder, Sid, if you had any questions for either Angela or Jen.
I don't specifically have any questions, but I do have such tremendous gratitude because if you think about it, most of my work was done in the Midwest of the US or in the eastern half of the US. And I have not, in and of myself, had the international reach that the work that you are doing has. And I appreciate that so much because we can do things like have a day following our conference. We can pair up our event with another event that enriches everybody. And that's what I'm always looking for, is a chance to make it much easier for us to come together in an authentic way, not just because, oh, I'm a presenter, I've got to go present and then I go home. No, hang around, let's have tea, let's get to know each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Sid. All right, let's open up to some questions. So Liliana, do you have a question for us?
Yes, there's a question from Lynn Fairfine. Hi all, and thank you. If someone is contemplating organizing something, what is one thing you view as important to do and one thing you view as important not to do?
Well, let's see if yeah. One thing is, I think you have to be very careful to invite people of all kinds, women of all kinds. No sexism, no sexism, no men. If you're going to do women's conferences, invite only men who are on the side of women. But what I mean is to say no racism, no ageism, no ableism, all of those things need to be eliminated. We need to be absolutely democratic in our invitation of people to speak and to come. I think probably there need to be some guidelines about keeping people comfortable, good places to have the conferences. But you just asked about one.
Okay, Jen. Thank you. How about you, Sid?
Well, the first thing that popped into my mind is what do you want to be sure to do? It's a great question. What do you want to be sure to do? Surround yourself with women who are already doing something wonderful. If possible, surround yourself with, for your planning. Now I'm talking about, I'm assuming that the process on this is, you've got a great idea. This pretty much has to happen or you will not rest at night. So then find other women who are interested or passionate about the same things, but be careful to pick the ones who are doing, who are actually, they're not merely addressing the topic itself, but as we said before, if you're making an event, it's not just the content, it's everything else that goes with it. So I always think about the fact that at one festival, which fortunately I was not organizing, there was a giant storm that came up one night at this outdoor festival, and the grand piano slid across the stage with all of the rain and everything that was beating down on it, and they almost lost the piano. And the reason I mention that is the women saved the piano. You know, people jumped up on the stage and helped make that happen. And that's the kind of women you want to work with. Metaphorically for me, it's the kind of woman that I can turn to and say, there's a storm coming, we have to batten down the tent. Or I can hand her a hammer and say, would you please go fix that? So but it's metaphoric, of course. She doesn't have to have a hammer in her hand, but she has to be willing to do what needs to be done. And I guess the converse to that is, do not, to get back to that thing about boundaries, do not surround yourself with people who have their own ideas and want to move yours so that it's more like theirs. Stick with your core idea. And then if it's a question of being willing to add other things to it, that's great. But don't let anybody in that initial stage when you're forming what you want to do, don't let somebody else kind of come in and say, well, I've always thought we would be better off to have a bookstore. Okay, fine, good luck, go have a bookstore. But this one right now, we're going to have a concert. Thank you. So I guess that's it.
Thanks, Sid. How about you, Angela?
What I would say is that, well, I agree with Sid and I agree with Jen, but what I would say is that, I mean, when you decide to make a conference, something like that, again, I say that you shouldn't try to do it just on your own. I mean, you know, there are many people who want to help and what to do and try to get people who agree with the subject or with what your idea it is of a conference, and then work together and try to see how much you can work together. And usually, well, I would say, for instance, that here in Colombia, I mean, because obviously we are different. I mean, you know, there are not so many queen bees as there are in other places in the United States or in the developed world. So basically, I mean, sometimes, you know, you work together easier, and I have found that, I don't know, that when the groups that I have had worked with, we have worked together and it has worked quite well. And that is, I mean, I think one should get help from other women and allow them to participate and to also get visibility, because basically most of this is about giving visibility to all people. When we had, for instance, the conference, Jen's conference in Nachira, we invited the women of Nachira also to participate, to talk, because, you know, many times their voices had not been heard by anywhere. And so it worked quite well. And what I would say about these things that you shouldn't do, is, well, this usually means a lot of work, you know, and so if you don't sleep, and if you have to sleep 2 or 3 hours, well, you just have to go ahead and do it until you get it through, and that's it. I mean, you know, a lot of sweat. That is the thing that one has to put into it, and don't let yourself be discouraged, because obviously these conferences, they have a lot of enemies, and mostly the enemies are from patriarchal people or from men who decide, you know, that they don't really want to be part of it. And I could even tell you that, for instance, we had a big problem by allowing a man to come in and be in charge of the restaurant in Nachira. And he turned out that he was a previous military, and he was terrible. And we are just trying to get rid of him and to leave and not to be part of that. But it's been very, very difficult. So I agree with the women of Nachira that it has been very difficult for us to get where we are. So we are not going to allow men to take that leadership from us.
Thanks, Angela. I am going to respond to a question that Peggy had put forward in the Q&A, and she's asking what about the idea of planning a mini follow-up at the end of certain conferences that allow people who wish to remain to have an opportunity to spend time relating what was discussed to the maternal gift economy. And I would just like to say, you're in line with our thinking, Peggy, because we just recently, Sid, Jen, and I had a conversation. We had our very first, Globalhood of Day of Global Sisterhood, sponsored by the International Feminists for the Gift Economy. And the way that ASWIM has their cycle of doing conferences biannually, they do a symposium on the off year. And we thought that it would be great if we, as the International Feminists for a Gift Economy, would actually hold one of those days on the off year with the symposium. So there you have it, Peggy. We're going to do it. You are just psychic. So it's going to be happening.
Yeah, and let me just add quickly to that we partly owe Lydia Rule for that, because she's the one who came to me early on in the game and said, we need to organize matriarchal studies in the US. Can we do that some way through your conference? And the first thing I said was, well, sure. First, we're going to put a sign on one of the doors, and you're going to have a 90-minute session or more if you want that just says, come and talk about matriarchal studies, and see who shows up and see what happens. But then after that, by the next year, we were ready to add a matriarchal studies day onto the back end of our conference. Now, and it's one of those things that we created the container so the other organization can come in readily at that day we don't have programming. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do as well with the maternal gift economy. And I can't think of anything more important really than to be able to let all women's peace boats rise together.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Great.
Judith, do you have a question for us?
I'm going to preface this with a brief comment on a conference that I had with a peripheral role in organizing. In 1981, Canada was in the process of drafting a new constitution. And it became obvious that women were not going to be protected under that constitution. And so a conference was hastily organized, a women's conference was hastily organized for the purpose of making sure that discrimination against women would have a central place in the document. The problem was that the federal Conservative Party had a position that they did not want to have a constitution at all. And the wife of the head of the Conservative Party was one of the organizers. And so what she wanted to do was bring forth a resolution that there should not be a constitution. The way the women worked it out is that they put that on the agenda, but they put it at the end of the agenda. They started off by saying, if there is a constitution, which was obvious was going to happen because there was a majority government, if there's a constitution, here's what it should say. And then at the very end, it was, should we have a constitution? But by that time, it was 10 o'clock at night and everybody was tired and everybody had gone home. And so that fell off the table. So I think that's a really good example of women's ingenuity in organizing conferences. And so the question is similar to the previous one. Can you tell us something that worked and something that didn't work in your organizing?
at Jane's launching of her book, we tried a system that was suggested by one of us, who was Letecia, and she suggested that we should use women's time. And that means that we knew when we started, but we didn't know when we were going to finish. And basically, I mean, obviously you had an agenda, and say, for instance, we say everybody should be here by 8 o'clock. And whoever wants to take longer speaking should do it. And whoever, but that meant that, you know, by the time was lunchtime, was supposed to be at 1 o'clock. We went on and it was 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock and everybody was hungry and we cannot finish because we were using women's time. So in a way, it was really interesting, it was fascinating, the idea. And I think, for instance, women's time is very important, rather than the patriarchal time, you know, you get up, you work from 7 to 9, from 8 to 10, and if we could use women's time, but on the other hand, we can really quite develop, how would it work, women's time, if you don't, you know, well, have it like that. I remember Mickey was really and truly upset because, you know, I mean, she was very upset. Why weren't we keeping time? Why were we using that sort of women's time? You know, and it's lunchtime and it's dinner time. And why we don't have lunch at dinner? So basically, you know, she was very upset. So it was something that we tried, and it would be very interesting to see where we could develop this business, this thing, women's time. What is women's time to difference to the patriarchal time?
Thanks, Angela. Sid, do you have something that you'd like to offer, something that didn't work and something that did work?
Yes. Let's see. They're actually the same thing because it didn't work the first time, but we persist. So we have been doing some outreach right since the beginning to find Native American scholars who were willing to come on as advisors and to help us with things like mentoring grad students and planning conferences and other things like that, to give us more input. So, and of course, I being me and losing Pat in the process of having to do it my own self, came at it in kind of a naive fashion. And we tried to do a Native American roundtable where we invited all of the folks, I think this was one of our earlier conferences, where we invited all the folks who were there and invited everybody else to come to this roundtable. Well, of course, I was surprised to see that something like 35 people showed up for it right at the beginning. Of course, it would be important, but the thing I was expecting to have happen did not happen. We had a 90-minute session, and it was one of those go around the room and introduce yourself. And everybody was saying, it was a room full of allies, basically, and maybe half a dozen Native women. And we're going around the room and everybody's talking about what a good ally they are. And I got annoyed, right? I mean, it just took up all of our 90 minutes to get around that circle.
Oh, gosh.
And that was not what I came for. I wanted to hear from them, not how much, boy, oh boy, you'll like me, watch this. Because I think we tend to do that. We're so individualistic that we forget that other cultures come to this as a collaborative venture, and you don't have to wear your most, your biggest garment to show how important you are in the room. What you need to do is kind of mostly just be quiet and listen. So we came back and regrouped after that. And I said, that was painful for me. I don't know how it was for other people, but I felt very apologetic. And so the next time we did it differently, and it worked much better, where we made it different than any other session that we held. And the difference was, you will, if you want to attend this session, you will come, the door will close, other people will not be admitted. It's not one you can float in late like a panel. You come for the conversation. The second part was, once it's set up and we have the container, the way it's structured is the Native and Indigenous women speak about whatever they want to speak about, and the rest of us sit there and listen. because we don't need to be heard. We've been heard so much with each other. We don't need it anymore. Let's find out what they have to say. And then if they want us to ask questions or to participate, they'll let us know. And it turned out to be one of the first genuinely authentic conversations I have had with a group of women like that. And I was so grateful for it. But it took some, some climbing around, and we're still learning. So I will say that about that. But in general, the other kind of trouble we always have is that people are doing the same thing. They're saying, but why do you only give me 15 or 20 minutes to speak? And the answer is because everybody else in the conference or on your panel is just as passionate about her work as you are about yours. And we have to stick to some kind of time so that we'll be able to cover everybody equally. What I said this last time was we're equally unfair to all of our speakers, which is pretty much true.
Sid, that's so funny. I like to say we want to give everyone a taste of your work, and we want to make sure that they can find you, because this is a place where there's a smorgasbord of all this opportunity so that people can find who you are, what you're about, and see where you align, and then take it from there. So it's really more about that. Otherwise, we would produce you individually, which also could be done, so there's that. So thanks, Sid, for that. How about you, Jen? What is something that didn't quite work, and then something that you're really proud of?
Well, I'll just tell you about something I'm proud of, because I've repressed all those other things.
They were too painful.
So when we did the peace stand in Nairobi, there was a Russian women's delegation. This was 1985, and so there was still the Iron Curtain and everything, and there was this Russian group, and led by a woman who spoke English very well, and she was actually I think a translator, and we were trying to kind of make friends. And we needed to put all the chairs in order in the tent. And we asked them to help us. So we did that together. And we had this moment of, doing something practical together. And we became friends after that. So it was a really cool thing.
Thanks, Jen. Liliana, do you have another question for us? We have about 10 minutes or so that we can respond to a question.
Yeah, there's a question from Maria Suarez. She says, in India at Vandanas, we cook together, planted together, danced together, and share planting and cooking knowledge together. For an in-between, can we do that in our places and video and share beforehand, and instead of doing only sharing info about whatever issues? I guess she wants to incorporate that part of the being together and not just the issues. That's what I understand, but I can read it again, see if somebody can understand the question better.
No, I think I think that I understood the question. Would any one of the panelists like to respond to that? I actually have a response. I would like to say, Maria, if you want to organize the first one, show us how to do it, and then we can follow, because it seems like you have a clear thought about what you want to do, and we want to support that. We want to support your vision. So, a shout out to you, and I'm on board with you. So let us know. Anyone else? Jen, what do you think? Yeah.
I don't know. It might be fun, but it would lengthen the whole process and change the nature of it. So if we're talking about our salons, I don't think I would do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe afterwards. There are other salons that have another day when people can talk to each other about the previous salon. So it's just, and that is, I think is a real good idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sid, any thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking about the fact that one of the things we've done at ASRM conferences, or not at the conference, but one of the things we've done a few times, mostly because I don't ever get to see a panel all the way through from beginning to end, you know, or I seldom do. Pity poor me, right? So sometimes in the past, we have pulled out of formation on an extra day. And if we have somebody around who has a home that's big enough for us, we just spread out the word and say, let's all go there and sit by their pool and talk. And that's what, that way we get past the inclination to have to feel like we need to continue to be experts. You know, we might be expert in a piece of content, but we also get to the point that we can just talk. And that's where the connections are made that the next film or book is going to come out of, I think.
Thanks, Sid. Yes, Angela, D, unmute, my friend. There you go.
I mean, one of the things that we did with Jen's conference in Nachira was that in the women participated, we had a final meeting in which everybody wanted to ask questions. Or some of the women, especially women of Nachira, wanted to ask Jen and wanted to ask the other speakers. Just, you know, in a sort of informal meeting, as she said, as Maria suggests, where we had a little, I mean, we ate something there, we had a very formal meeting, I mean, you know, just talking to each other. And then they wanted to know how these speakers have got where they were. They wanted to know what Jen's life has been like, and how what happened to her, what happened to her life. I mean, you know, and I remember them asking all sorts of questions, and some of them were really quite awkward, really. Yeah. And well, I don't know where that is what Maria means, but obviously this sort of, you know, a conversation at the end in which we were not talking about the subject of the conference, but more about the human being, the life of everybody, you know, and I mean, okay, I came back saying, oh yes, I got pregnant when I was 18 and I had an abortion from a communist man. So somehow you just, you know, this sort of human bit of that.
Thanks, Angela. Yes, Jen.
I just wanted to say, Angela, you told your life story too, and that was wonderful. I think you still think you need to write it. Yeah,
yeah, I remember it was very funny. Yes.
I'm glad that your life amuses you, Angela.
It's admirable.
Well, yes, very admirable. Well, I would like to say, Maria, you may not have been to this meeting, but the symposium that was Maria Gambutis' symposium at the very end, one of the final gatherings that we did, it was an online event, was basically a roundtable, and people actually got to ask questions and talk about their permissions, and it was a beautiful experience. I also do think that it depends on the context of the situation of the conference, you know, what it's about and what it entails, because sometimes, you know, it's not necessarily appropriate, but I have experienced certain things when we've gone to conferences together, Jen, where we go to a conference, we do a bunch of work, and then we have to have downtime. And then those of us who are still available actually sort of go someplace else for a day to decompress. So I think it's very, very important to do that. And that's goes back to what Sid says, to remember to take care of yourself and remember to take care of each other, especially the organizers who are there. And I would say also that in organizing conferences, if we do want to have a multi-generational experience, we do need to be able to accommodate and attend to the different ages, mothers that are nursing and have children, and also our elders. And I was happy to say I'm happy to report that at the last ASWM, I really felt that we have graduated there, that there was the fullness of an engagement with people cross-generationally, cross-culturally. And I keep meaning to say this, so I'm going to say it now. You know, you cannot have a matriarchy without having matriarchal men. So I feel that that was the last ASWM, the one picture that we saw of that man who was the water keeper, the water tender, that we did experience matriarchal men at ASWM. We don't often, especially in the West. Western cultures generally don't have the experience of men who were raised in matriarchal cultures. So we don't really even know what that looks like, because men from the West who want to support matriarchies, sometimes, you know, that deep-rooted work needs to be done. You know, so that's what I could say. The men who want to support matriarchy, and if you have men in your life, that you need to have them bridge the gap by being around men who were raised in matriarchies. That's what I would say. So. Okay, I think there is one more question that Liliana has. We'll go just a tiny bit over, but I think we can do it.
Yeah, this is a question from Mary B. And she says, this is probably not easy work that you do. Can you talk about what inspired you to do this work? What was the moment you took the decision to do this organizing?
Well, I'm going to answer that question first, and then I'm going to go to the other people. You know, I keep hearing the same, whenever I tell this story or whenever I share my answer to this, at a very young age, from the time that I was 5 or 6 years old, I had adult women who told me all along that I needed to be ready to help organize, specifically women, to help. She didn't use the words, because I was like, you know, I think one woman, I was probably about 5. And then the next I was 10. And then I had elders all along who guided me specifically, even to take leadership classes and take speech classes, to be able to be prepared to facilitate circles, etc. And I trusted my elders. That's what inspired me. I trusted my elders to be able to see the future, that women were important, that I had a place in the world to be able to, that I could contribute. And at each of the stages, none of the women could tell me exactly what my job was. There was not a title for my job. They just said that in the world that was coming, and they were of all races and all ages, that they could see that I would be somebody who would be able to facilitate that work, and that women needed to come forward. So that's what inspired me. So Jen, you're unmuted. Would you like to say what inspired you?
Well, I went to an all-girls high school, all-women's college, and then I had 3 daughters after I got married. So I've been with women all my life, and I've also, when I learned about patriarchy and why patriarchy happened and what it was doing to the world, I realized that we really are an alternative force, and we have to do what we possibly can. So I've had that kind of mindset for a long, long time now. 50 years, 60 years, something, 50 years.
Thanks, Jen. Jen's forgetting how old she is.
I can't calculate those numbers anymore.
Angela D.
I think I had already organized some conference, but I think what really changed my way of seeing conference and of seeing and working with women was to be invited to the WWW, the Wise Women Workshop. and in Letecia. I mean, it was a fabulous meeting, and I met all these fantastic women, all of them who were doing different things for women in different fields. And somehow it was amazing. It was a 15-day learning from all of them, because everybody had something to say, something to tell us how, in a way, they were changing the world for women. And obviously, that was when I met Jen.
Thanks, Angela. How about you, Sid?
Well, I've been thinking about it, and it always comes back to feeling fairly simple for me. But I think I really got hooked on the idea when we'd been organizing this music festival in Bloomington for several years, and friends of mine had a retreat center where they were responsible at that point for the spirituality workshops. I kind of handed that off to somebody else. And they would take the spirituality presenters, the main presenters, back up to their place in central Indiana and have maybe 2 days of just sitting around the pool and talking and having a cup of tea. And those were the conversations. I got to talk to Vicki Noble. I got to talk to Pat Monahan. I got to talk to lots of folks. And I treasured those conversations, because you get past the, yes, here, let me explain what I'm doing and why, which we all have to do. I call it Feminism 101, Lesbianism 101, or Goddess Spirituality 101, where you keep having to, we don't have to explain anything. We just hop right in the middle and talk about what change we needed to see, what ethical dilemma we were facing, what kind of resources we needed. Ooh, that's exciting. So I got hooked on wanting that conversation. And that's how Pat and I put it a couple of different times, was we can't let the conversation die. We have to find a container so that this kind of conversation can go on. And some of it's just purely selfish. I want to be in the room. Like I said, this is my passion and I want to be in the room. But it's also that I never know where things are going to end, but my inclination to organize was, I don't have to be organizing just to make a living. I can be organizing to create a better life for a whole lot of folks, and it makes a big difference.
Thanks, Sid. So Jen, would you like to add any last words?
No, not really. Just keep on organizing and keep on going to conferences.
Angela D., would you like to add something?
To say about the participation of men in these conferences. I mean, I don't know what I am going to say is going to, but basically the problem is that when we have had men coming in, they always seem to shout more. And so women seem to go quiet, or then there starts a competition to get the attention of that man. So I am not all that happy to have men coming around. I think you probably remember when we were in Brazil. If you remember that, Jen, there was this charming man that had been in the Amazon, that we went to that farm there. And anyway, I mean, he was so charming that we started all swearing around him. And he was the one who had the last words and everything. So somehow I am not all that happy about bringing men around.
Thanks, Angela. Sid, do you have any last words?
Just one last thing for somebody asked a question about, does Zoom offer us additional opportunities? And I think it does. I think we have to be creative with Zoom, but I also want to say, in case anybody hasn't grokked onto this piece of research yet, we now know that oxytocin can be produced through Zoom meetings because we already know how to do it. So when we're in the right, loving community, it's easy for us to ramp up our own oxytocin. So just saying, it's worth doing. In some cases, when we do our work with a single scholar at a time, it's definitely worth it to get that conversation on Zoom and get it recorded. So that's about all I would want to add to this, except just that this has been a wonderful discussion and a great opportunity, and I thank you all so much.
Yes, I would like to thank our speakers, Genevieve Vaughan, Angela Dolmetsch, Sid Reger. For those of you who are here listening in the room now, you can find more of their work, of course, online, and we'll make sure that we have contact information when we put the video up and recording of this session. I want to thank Diane, our ever-present holding the space tech goddess woman, Liliana and Judith for scanning the chat and the questions, keeping us on target, making sure that we pay attention to those in attendance. On behalf of the International Feminists for the Gift Economy Network, I want to thank all of you who came today for your time to be with us. This work is really important. It really is a call to action. The world is in a state where women want to come together. And if you can and have the passion and inspiration, begin to organize, invite us. Many of us will come. Next Saturday, July 15th, we're going to bring a special book event. Barbara Mann and Frida Kahlo will introduce their new book, The Woman Who Married the Bear, The Spirituality of Ancient Foremothers. In 2 weeks, Saturday, July 22nd, Salon number 50, we will have, Salon number 50, we're going to have Vandana Shiva and her sister Mira, who will be presenting Making Peace with the Earth, an Ecofeminist Manifesto. Joining Vandana and Mira will be 4 women in our network who attended and helped shape this manifesto: Angela Dolmetsch, Angela Miles, Karina Kahlo, and Maria Suarez. They traveled to India in March this year to participate in the shaping of this document. That document was launched, and we are very excited and honored that Vandana would come and present it to our community. She had an international launch in Italy with a series of events, but she wanted to come and present it to you all. So until next time, next Saturday, if you will, stay safe, be well, be kind to one another. Peace. Take good care, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.